For more on gun violence in America, let's bring in Robert Spitzer. He's an adjunct professor at the College of William and Mary Law School. Thanks for joining us on the program today. The Georgia school shooting marked the 30th mass killings in the US so far this year, in which at least 127 people have died. As JD Vance said last week, are school shootings just a fact of life, of living in America, that we should all just get used to?
School shootings exist. School shootings have been increasing, but they certainly should not be taken or accepted as a fact of life. It's the kind of statement made by somebody seeking high public office who does not want to see any effort turned to stronger gun laws. And if one lesson comes out of this particular shooting, this school shooting in Georgia, it's that a number of different types of gun laws, had they been in place in the state of Georgia, they might well have prevented this shooting from happening and others around the country.
First, the parents of the Oxford High School shooter were charged, and now it's Colin Gray, father of the Appalachia School shooting suspect. He faces even more serious charges. Is this a precedent-setting push to hold parents responsible for school shootings now?
Yes, it is, but it's important to point out that the case that you mentioned from Michigan last year and this case are both ones where the parents willingly gave dangerous firearms to their children, where the children were underage, where the children were obviously under stress and were exhibiting all kinds of behavioral signs and warning signals indicating that they should not have had guns in the first place. And if you think a crime is likely and you facilitate that crime, that does open you up to legal prosecution. And in the case of the actions of this father who bought an AR-15 assault-style rifle for his son when his son was 13 years old, this was last year, and now the son is 14 and committed this terrible crime, and knowing that the son was under tremendous stress, that the family was split apart, that they had lost their home, that the son was exhibiting obvious behavioral problems in school and at home, that he took actions that were extremely irresponsible and that do open up the prospect of prosecution of him. And I think it is an appropriate turn when parents play this kind of active role in something that winds up so terrible.
Lawmakers are wrestling with what to do. I believe in Georgia, they're looking at safe gun storage laws. Studies show this is a law that does reduce injuries and deaths among youth. How many states have and enforce this law, and is it enough?
Roughly 26 states, just more than half, have some kind of law like that on the books. And it's not a panacea, it's not a cure-all, but if guns are properly stored and locked, unloaded with the ammunition in a different location, that prevents, that's a good way to reduce and prevent circumstances where children might get a hold of guns, or a suicidal person suddenly seizes a gun and uses it, where a gun could otherwise be stolen and then used later in a crime. Putting guns under lock and key is one perfectly sensible thing to do. In fact, even the gun people recognize that you're supposed to, and say you're supposed to keep your guns in the home that way. But we know that nationwide, only about half of guns in homes are stored in this manner. And that is something that could help significantly. It wouldn't eliminate the problem, but sure it could help, as in this case.
21 states have extreme risk protection laws, sometimes referred to as red flag laws. But analysis by AP found many US states barely use these red flag laws. Talk a little bit about what these laws entail and why states aren't using them.
Well, red flag laws say that if you know somebody who owns firearms who indicates suicidal or homicidal behavior, you can go to the authorities and say, look, this person has guns and he's talking about killing himself, let's say. Authorities can intervene, remove the guns from the home, then have a hearing to determine whether or not the guns should be returned to the person. And they're not used a great deal, partly because we're talking about a very small number of cases to begin with, where these circumstances manifest themselves. And the second point is that people have to instigate the procedure to begin with. That is, somebody has to go to the authorities and say, look, here's this person who owns guns and is indicating serious problems. And in some states where these laws have been on the books for a longer period of time, and where citizens realize that they can do this, it's more likely to effectuate a good outcome. And indeed, studies have shown that when seizures occur, in 1 in every 10 to 1 in every 20 instances, a suicide is prevented. And that, in fact, is where the biggest benefit comes, but it can obviously come into play in circumstances like this as well.
Robert Spitzer, really appreciate your time.